Hello you fans of pudding and welcome aboard the Prinz Eugen. It's the world's biggest stat tour and only destroyer captain not to have a problem with radar. That's definitely fact and not just me having a big ego. That's not what it is, it's fact, okay? That's what it is. Anyhow, we're here on Two Brothers in the Prinz Eugen, and I know I did say that well, I didn't really say, but I did tease, I suppose, that the next video was going to be on the Akizuki. I'm actually having a lot of trouble putting together a good game in the Akizuki. It really can test your patience when every game is tier 10, and as much as I don't mind radar, when every single game has 2 or 3 Des Moines, it can get a little bit exhausting. But we're here in the Prinz Eugen anyway, because I had an interesting game this morning that I thought I would share. And you can see there's an enemy Bismarck. We'll take a few shots at him, and the Ognavoy has popped up as well. Now I have got a Z-23 playing this flank with me, as well as a couple other ships behind me, but in typical me fashion, I'm far too far forward compared to the positioning of the rest of my team, especially my battleships. But it's not such a big deal. The Bismarck is firing high explosive, rather stupidly, so I'm not too concerned. Anyhow, the Prinz Eugen, really good. Really good. I absolutely adore the Prinz Eugen. I liked it before the heal. I like it even more now. Not so sure I like what it stands for, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail now, actually. The Prinz Eugen never used to have a heal. It used to be that the Prinz Eugen was essentially just a carbon copy of the Hipper. You know, not necessarily something that's a bad thing. The Hipper, before the buffs, was still a good ship, even though some people absolutely hated it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But the Prinz Eugen was just essentially a carbon copy that looked a lot nicer. And, you know, I didn't really have a problem with that. I enjoyed the Hipper enough that having what was essentially a premium Hipper was completely fine to me. I didn't have any complaints. I didn't feel like I hadn't got my money's worth out of the Prinz Eugen. But then a little while ago, there were some interesting changes made. The Prinz Eugen received a heal, which has made it extremely powerful, but that's not really the most important change here. The Hipper, however, got a reload buff and I think also a rudder shift buff. So essentially it split the Prinz Eugen and the Hipper into 2 different roles. The Prinz Eugen became the tank, and the Hipper became the damage dealer, the glass cannon, if you will. And the problem that I have with this, and it's not a massive problem, I will admit, you know, we've seen things like this in the Atago and the Mogami. Pretty much the same situation as the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. I mean, Atago didn't always have that heal. I know most people will probably think it did. Most people weren't around when Atago didn't have a heal. Neither was I, to be honest, but there you go. I do happen to know Atago didn't always have the heal. So it does remind me very much of this Prinz Eugen and Hipper situation. But what it stands for is irritating to me. Essentially, what you have here is Wargaming trying to make a premium different to a standard Tech Tree ship. Not something that's a problem. It should be encouraged. I don't like very much the idea of premiums being the same and carbon copies. It does irritate me. Not so much, but it gets on my nerves a bit. So I can sympathise with, and to a certain degree respect, the desire behind changing the Prinz Eugen and the Hipper. However, what we have as a result is essentially a Prinz Eugen that is better than the Hipper. It's just better. Granted, the Hipper can put out more damage faster and it's a bit more manoeuvrable, but the most important part of any ship in World of Warships, in my opinion at least, and the most important part of a cruiser in particular, especially a German cruiser, is its staying power, its ability to mitigate damage and survive taking a beating, because German cruisers are not stealthy. You are going to be seen at quite a big distance. To put it in one interesting way, the Prinz Eugen has a bigger surface detect than the Roma, which I know is the stealthiest, or at least the second stealthiest battleship at tier 8, but that's not the point. It's got a bigger detect than a battleship. Prinz Eugen will be seen at a distance, and so will the Hipper. Except when the Hipper is seen, it has no way of mitigating the damage it will take. The Prinz Eugen does. And that's where the problems come in my opinion, and why the Prinz Eugen is just flat out better than the Hipper. Which is a shame, because, well, the Hipper and the Prinz Eugen are two fantastic ships. It's just a shame that the premium has to be better. And I'm just checking the scoreboard there. It turns out it is the Ognivoy. They don't have a British cruiser or anything like that. So I'm not too worried. Hydra's going to detect the torpedoes anyway, and in fact the Indianapolis radars the Ognivoy, so we've got a spot on him. But yes, the Prinz Eugen became better than the Hipper, and that does get on my nerves. There are going to be people who like the Hipper more, but in my opinion, the Hipper's buffs are not enough to justify the buffs to the Prinz Eugen. Really, what the Hipper would have needed is... I do like the reload buff, I really do. But what the Hipper really would have needed in order to make it as powerful, in my opinion, as the Prinz Eugen, is a concealment buff. Take the Hipper's concealment to, say, 10 kilometers or 9.8, something like that, around the level of the Otago, and I would be very happy with it. It would have that stealthiness that would mean it didn't rely on mitigating damage as much as the Prinz Eugen does. But as it stands right now, with them having the same concealment, the Prinz Eugen is simply far better suited to tanking the shells that will inevitably be fired. And that does get on my nerves. I feel like they buffed the wrong thing on the Hipper, and consequently the Prinz Eugen is the better choice. Not to say that the Hipper is a bad choice, however. The Hipper is still pretty damn good. It's certainly viable, and I wouldn't begrudge anyone playing the Hipper over the Prinz Eugen. It's just disappointing to me that they went the way they did with these changes. Even though the changes themselves are to be admired, Wargaming going back to a premium that really didn't get the love it deserved. It was slammed at release and pretty much throughout its time in the game until the heel was added as being a carbon copy Hipper, which, again, like I said, I didn't have a problem with, but a lot of people did. And it was slammed for that, and it didn't sell very well, or at least I'm willing to bet it didn't sell very well. I'm willing to bet this was the worst selling premium of its year, I imagine. To be honest, I forget exactly what the year the Hipper the Prinz Eugen even got released in. It's been a while, but I'm willing to bet it didn't sell very well at all. And so it is admirable for Wargaming to go back and try to fix that mistake and make the Prinz Eugen... I keep on calling it the Hipper, I'm awful. To make the Prinz Eugen more appealing to people, and I'm glad they did, but I wish they'd done it in another way. Anyhow, complaints about the way that the Prinz Eugen was rebalanced aside, let's actually talk about the game for a minute. Things have gone a little bit south, although it's not really as bad as it might seem. They are contesting our cap, that is the Ognivoy, but we do have a couple of battleships over near their cap, and it's only being defended by, I believe, a New Mexico and a Bismarck. I'm not entirely certain. I get a very small window to look at while I'm recording the audio here, so it is a bit difficult for me to tell exactly what target is what. But they've got a Cleveland, York, King George V and Takao, who are not necessarily pushing our cap, but they're in the area, just reminding us that we need to play defensive here. And that, due to the heel, is something that Prinz Eugen can definitely do. Of course, she can also be extremely aggressive due to that heel, and the general good armouring of the Prinz Eugen overall allows her to be a particularly aggressive cruiser, which is probably why she suits my playstyle so well. We're playing quite passive in this game, but Prinz Eugen in general is suited to a more aggressive playstyle. Either way, the long gun range means that we can pretty safely engage these targets here without having to worry too much. You can see most of their shells are just going to consistently miss. Prinz Eugen does have that ability to tank hits and just to dodge hits at extreme range. Even though her rudder shift is ostensibly worse than Hipper's, it doesn't really matter. We're going to set a fire on the King George V. I don't like firing a lot of high explosive in my Prinz Eugen. It's a little bit anemic, much like the high explosive on other German cruisers and destroyers. The Prinz Eugen's feels just a little bit weaker than high explosive of an equal nation, and the inbuilt IFHE doesn't really matter since we are firing 8-inch guns, so you don't really feel powerful with your HE here the same way you might do in the Nuremberg. of course the Nürnberg's rate of fire also makes it absolutely ridiculous, but the Prinz Eugen's HE is still definitely usable. It's just you want to be predominantly firing the AP, and I don't get too many chances to get good use out of the AP in this game, which is a shame, but we are having to play very defensively against angled targets, so the HE really was the better choice here, even though I'm not that big a fan of it. And you will see some shit-talking from a couple of players on the team. The Scharnhorst, one of the dead players. I can't tell exactly what ship he's playing. Like I say, I have a very, very small window to look at this. But yeah, I will be sending them all reports, obviously. I try not to get involved in these arguments in chat anymore. It tends to lead to me getting chat banned, which obviously I don't particularly enjoy. So I just send a report and leave it at that for the most part. And yeah, we've set a couple of fires on the KGV there, which is definitely nice. The Prinz Eugen's fire chance is not fantastic by any means. I believe I run Demo Expert on this commander. I'm not entirely sure. The commander build will be available on the screen at the start of the match, obviously. You will have seen it already, so you can probably tell me if I'm being an idiot. But yeah, you should probably run Demo Expert on your German cruisers. I'd certainly do on my Hindenburg, because the fire chance just isn't there, and at higher tiers, even with the Hindenburg, a ship which really can put out amazing damage against battleships and cruisers with the armor piercing, if they're broadside, even with the Hindenburg, you're going to be relying pretty heavily on the performance of your HE in a lot of situations. So Demo Expert is definitely a good pick. You want to be able to set those fires, and the German cruisers don't start with the most amazing fire chance. It's just a way to compensate and ensure your HE still does pretty good damage, even though the alpha damage of every shot is quite disappointing, to be honest. And I'm trying to maximize my use of AP here. You can see me switching to it whenever I get a whiff of a broadsiding cruiser. And we do actually get a Citadel. I believe that was on the Takao. I think that's the Takao. You can probably tell how small my window here is, because even though I was looking directly at it, I still couldn't tell what it was. Ah, dear. But these targets are slowly going down, and the New Mexico has arrived now. The Arizona is down here on this side of the map also. For all the good the Arizona won't do. And these targets are slowly getting whittled down, which is excellent. We have pulled back the points, and the defensive operation here is going pretty well. This York is definitely dead. The Cleveland and the Takao, they're dead as well. They just don't know it yet. And I appear to have run out of coffee as well, which is miserable, because I have a really sore throat, so I probably shouldn't be doing this today. But the York is going to be the next one to go down, if I remember correctly. It's just a case of he's the closest one. Cleveland is, of course, using islands to try and stay stealthed, which is obviously what you should be doing in the Cleveland. Using islands to stay stealthed is kind of par for the course in that ship. Of course, you don't always get the option, and when you don't get the option, Cleveland's viability is extremely limited, but it's still tankier than something like the Mogami. And I'm waiting for the Cleveland at this point to show me a better broadside, and I figure, you know what, he's turning in, let's have a go. And that's not going to go very well, a bit of a spoiler, but that goes terribly for me. Which is annoying. I was kind of hoping for the Citadel, but yeah, it works out in the end. We still get a good performance out of this game. And while I can see the York there, we'll take an HE shot, because, you know what, he's almost dead. We might as well take the shot anyway. See exactly how much we can do to him. And one more salvo ought to finish off the York. I'm not entirely certain, but it should. There we go. I don't always remember exactly what I get up to in these battles, so it's a bit bad of me to not to watch them again before I do audio, but I'm extremely lazy, is the end goal of that. Which is okay, because, as we previously established, I'm the only one whose opinion or whose convenience is important. So really, it's okay that I'm not, you know, shall we say, actually trying hard. It's okay, because I'm the only one who matters. And the Takao stealthed up again. It's kind of annoying, but That Takao survives way more hits than he should. I wish that fire had just burnt him to death. It would have saved me a bit of time later, but one thing at a time. And that HE, spoiler, is not going to fucking kill him. Of course it's not. But the Cleveland runs himself aground. I think he was panicking. He certainly got the health pool to panic. So we're going to load up the armor piercing, and that's when I spot the Takao again, just after I fire the HE at the Cleveland. If only I just waited for a second. But there's the Confederate anyway. We pick up Confederate against the Cleveland there and fire an armor piercing at the broadside. Yeah, it was annoying how much that Takao survived, but he does die eventually, so it's not the biggest problem. Anyhow, there will be a little bit of a cut in just a moment. The Takao is going to stealth up, and I'm kind of skipping out a lot of the waiting because it was a lot of waiting for me to find that Takao again. So that skip will be in just a second. Actually, it'll be, right now. There we go. So we'll skip a little bit forward, and I'm spotted by the Takao's plane, so I'm going to launch mine. And then I see the Takao just to the side of that island. He's firing AP. Obviously, he's hoping for me to be on the broadside so he can take me out in one salvo, but Japanese AP is weak, so it's fine. And there he goes. Kraken unleashed. Pretty nice game. Pretty nice game. Okay, so we're looking at the results screen for that battle in the Prinz Eugen. It's 135,000 damage, of course 5 kills, Confederate, Dreadnought and Kraken Unleashed. Pretty good score all round. I'm very happy with the result, and I promise I will be getting to Akizuki eventually. Just give me some more time. The Akizuki's been really bad to play lately with all the radars going around, and it's been quite challenging. So in the meantime, I do hope that this Prinz Eugen battle will at least sate your desire to see me be terrible in the meantime.